It is May 18th, 2022. The time is 18 p.m. We are opening up our first public hearing of the evening. First up on the public hearing agenda is Trobix property tax abatement. And we are now opening up the microphone for anybody who would like to come up and speak specifically on this item. Is there anybody out there that would like to come on up? Okay, we will time to run out until 6:20 p.m. and then we will close this opportunity and open up our second public hearing agenda.
That was, I refuse to leave the building.
Okay, I'm going to close the Trobix property tax abatement public hearing. The time is 6:21 p.m. And then I'm going to open up our second public hearing for the night. Again, it is 6:21 p.m. This one is for a public hearing on parking fees required by Minnesota statute. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Lori Putnam, Dr. Lori Putnam.
Thank you, Chair Haas, members of the board, Superintendent Jeff. Like many other districts around the state and country, St. Cloud area schools assesses parking fees. Board Policy 527 provides details related to motor vehicle use while on St. Cloud area schools property. Guidelines and parking permit forms can be found in the family and student handbooks, which are presented to, discussed, and approved by the Board of Education each summer. Because parking fees fall into the category of neither authorized nor prohibited fees as defined by Minnesota State Statute 123B.38, we must provide an opportunity for the public to give input prior to authorizing these fees. Our annual fee for a parking permit at our high schools is $100 for families who do not qualify for educational benefits, formerly known as free and reduced lunch application, $40 for families who qualify for reduced fee status, and $20 for families who qualify for full educational benefits.
Other would like to come forward for specifically the public hearing on parking fees? Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing. The time is 6:23 PM. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and viewing information can be found on the district website. This meeting is now called to order. It is 6:29 PM, May 18th, 2022. Our mission is to provide a safe and caring climate and culture in which we engage, inspire, educate, prepare, and empower all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. Les, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Then can you please call roll?
Scott Andreasen.
Here.
Natalie Copeland. Not present. Al Dahlgren. Here. Zach Dorhold.
Here.
Les Green is present. Shannon Hawes.
Here.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Here.
The following cabinet members and staff are present at the District Administration Office: Superintendent Willie Jett, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education, Dr. Mike Rivard, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Human Resources and Labor Relations, Tracy Flynn Bowe, Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, Lori Posch, Executive Director of Operations, Gary Ganji, Media Technicians, Paul Novak and Gordy Scott. The custodian on site is Steve Hain. Following cabinet members and staff are virtually present: Director of Community Engagement and Communications, Tammy DeLand, Director of Equity Services, Ayan Omar, Executive Director of Community Education, Adam Holm, Executive Director of Research, Assessment, and Enrollment, Donna Roper, Executive Assistant, Jan McGuire.
Thank you. Now I'm looking for approval of tonight's Board of Education meeting agenda.
I so move.
Second.
I have a motion by Scott and the second by Al. Les, can you please call roll?
Andreasen,
Yes.
Natalie Cope, Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Zach Dorhold, Les Green is yes, Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes. Thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board adopts routinely without debate. Any single member may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. On tonight's consent agenda, item A, approval of minutes from April 6, 2022 and April 20th, 2022. Item B, approval of bills and other financial transactions in the grand total amount of $3,556,801.08. Item C, approval of personnel staff changes. Item D, acceptance of grant awards and donations. And item E, Catherine Johnson Education Center project change order totaling $62,351,062. Does any board member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Al and a second by Monica. Les, can you please call roll?
Al
And a second by Monica. Go ahead, sorry to interrupt
Still
you.
going to ask. Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Scott Andreasen,
Yes.
Zach Dorhold.
Yes.
Les Green is yes, Shannon Hawes,
Yes,
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
thank you. Okay, moving on to information items. First up, we have alternate programs update. Dr. Mike Rivard, Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education, is going to introduce his team, or part of his team. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I wish they were. They are certainly part of District 742's leadership team. Carol Potter is absent this evening, and I was asked to introduce these two wonderful special educators and educators, both of whom I've known since the 90s. So we see in front of us more than 50 years of special education experience. And being there, not only just on these alternative programs, but throughout the years, working with students and ensuring that they're successful from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. So this evening, I have the pleasure of introducing Kate Butowski, who is our Director of Alternative Programs, and Brenda Blackmore, who's our Director of Care and Treatment Programs, as they provide an update on all the wonderful things going on in District 742 for those students. Thank you.
Well, thank you and good evening, and thank you for having us tonight. We're here today to talk to you about the educational programming provided to District 742 students outside of the mainstream setting. These are the alternative programs that offer students a smaller classroom, a higher adult-to-student ratio, individualized programming, and better access to curriculum through the use of specialized instruction. Students will learn skills that support both their academic and social-emotional learning. Across alternative programs, District 742 has served and supported over 150 students in the 2021-2022 school year. The first area that we would like to speak to is our federal Setting 4 programs located at Roosevelt Education Center and the Katherine Johnson Education Centers. Setting 4 is a federal setting designation that indicates a separate site program in which students are receiving services based on an individual education plan, or IEP, without the presence of non-disabled students. Students are referred to our programs from their IEP teams at their home schools. These programs serve ISD 74 students who demonstrate significant emotional, behavioral, and mental health needs, who, despite the consistent and ongoing programming at their home schools, require a more intentional plan that will focus on improving specific skills as identified by their team. The educational teams at these sites work with families to design a plan through the IEP process. The students receive the same core classes, math, science, social studies, language arts, and a variety of allied courses, with a focus on learning skills that are taught and practiced and reinforced throughout the school day. The educational teams are consistent in the classroom skills they teach. The counselors work together to ensure that students' behavioral skills are addressed through individual and group sessions. And they focus on a variety of skills such as anger management, understanding anxiety, being flexible, and calming strategies, just to name a few.
As previously noted, we carry a smaller staff-to-student ratio in our programs. In addition to the staffing listed here, we currently have 2 physical education teachers, 1 at each building, or a lead teacher at each building, and a shared academic coach to support teacher instruction and student learning. As in many of our schools, the staffing shortage has affected our programs at Roosevelt and Katherine Johnson Education Centers. We've had to think and work flexibly to meet the student needs across the past school year. We've done so by adjusting schedules, locations of staff, creative scheduling with students, and being really flexible in all of our roles on the floor. These smaller staff-to-student ratios have allowed for us to engage in activities that stretch students' academic and emotional learning skills. As you can see here on the top picture, the elementary is taking students to an outing in the sledding hill at Riverside Park. Outings allow our students to create school family while also practicing their social, emotional, behavioral skills in community settings. Our elementary students also start and end their week in Circle, where they check in, do affirmations, and set goals and group commitments for the week. On the bottom, students are engaged in a small group math class where they work individualized at a level to cover the student holes in their identified needs. All of our programs focus on social emotional learning, academics, and school families. We utilize conscious discipline, health realization, and other social emotional learning curriculum to assist our students in developing coping, self-regulation, self-advocacy, and executive functioning skills. If we can help our students understand how their brains, body, and thinking work together, we can help them grow in their social interaction skills and overall behaviors. In addition to the core academics previously mentioned, we provide academic intervention and support to help close academic gaps and increase academic skills. Many of their students and their families have had difficult school experiences in the past. Our goal is to create a school family that increases connection and trust so students and families are able to identify school as a positive factor in their lives. While it is important for our students to feel safe and successful in our settings, it is also important to many of our students to work towards transitioning back to their mainstream schools. It can be difficult to return to a mainstream setting after experiencing success in a smaller setting. To promote success, we ensure students have been regularly practicing the skills they are needing to be successful. We identify activities or classes that they find interesting, and we start small with 1 or 2 classes at a time. We also create connections with staff at home schools so students have a safe person upon returning. This year, we engaged in a pilot with Apollo that utilized the special education lead teacher, Nancy Miller, who is pictured here, as the liaison between the Apollo teachers and systems and our students at Roosevelt Education Center. For much of the year, Nancy came to Roosevelt once a week to meet with students who were in transition or who were preparing for transition. This allowed her to establish relationships with students and ensure things were going smoothly from both ends. She then serves as the point person for our kids when they're at Apollo. This regular communication has been the key to supporting students across schools. This year, we've had over 27% of our students at all of our Setting 4 programs participating in some form of academic transition in their past school, or in their school this past year.
A successful transition is always the end goal for students that participate in our programs. This student is currently attending the middle school located at the Katherine Johnson Education Center. We're working in partnership with South Junior High, his family, and Prince to create a transition plan that addresses his academic and social emotional goals. This student is currently enrolled in 1 class per trimester. He started his transition in December with aspirations of successfully completing a class and participating on the boys basketball program. With the support of his school team, the student was successful on both aspects of his plan. His hope is to take additional classes during the 22-23 school year and continue to participate in the athletic program. The middle school program currently has 8 out of its 30 students participating in reconnecting with their home school. We have lots of movement for the upcoming 22-23 school year. Roosevelt will be welcoming CAP, which is our Alternative to Suspension program, and the Journey program will expand to serve students grades 4 through 8 while continuing to provide service to students in grades 9 through age 21. Katherine Johnson Education Center will serve all of our Setting 4 grades K through 12 programs, as well as the InStep 18 to 21 transition program. Student services itinerant staff that have been previously located at Apollo and other district sites will now be located at the Katherine Johnson site. The next area of alternative programs that we would like to speak to is our care and treatment programs. St. Cloud Area Schools has ongoing partnerships with several agencies in the St. Cloud area. The St. Cloud Hospital, Clara's House, Recovery Plus, and Newport Academy. These are the care and treatment facilities that provide a service to families in the St. Cloud and surrounding areas. For care and treatment facilities located in our district, St. Cloud area schools must provide educational services, including special education if eligible, to all students placed in the facility. We do not design, develop, or recruit for these privately run programs. Our commitment is to provide the educational programming that students need while in the care and treatment sites. These programs provide a variety of mental health interventions for students in the central Minnesota area. During a typical school year, these programs provided support for up to 451 students ages 3 to 18.
The final area of alternative programs we would like to cover today is our 18 to 21 transition programs. While students on individual education plans are attending high school, they receive services in the area of transition. Transition covers academic and post-secondary preparation, job and job training, independent living, and when needed, recreation and leisure skills. Sometimes a student demonstrates a need that's significant enough that it cannot be met by the end of their natural senior year. In these cases, IEP teams can determine the need for ongoing transition programming in one of our 18 to 21 programs. Goals and skills specific to transition needs are then identified. We provide teachers and paraprofessional job coaches to support students in gaining and practicing skills. Students can participate up to their 21st year, but may graduate earlier depending on their need. Our goal in these programs is to assist students in their final preparation to transition them to the next step in life, whatever that may be. Our first 18 to 21 program that we have is the Community Options 2 program, otherwise known as CO2. CO2 serves students with mild to moderate disabilities and is a partnership between the District 742 and the College of Education at St. Cloud State University. CO2 is housed at Stearns Hall, a resident hall on St. Cloud State campus that offers a unique, age-appropriate, community-based, inclusive setting. They utilize Garvey Commons for their lunches, engage in recreation and leisure at the campus rec center, and work along other college students and employees at on-campus job training sites. In addition to St. Cloud State, there are many different community partnerships that we have developed to prepare our students through work internships. Some of these include St. Benedict's, Petters Auto Body, Colburn's, Goodwill, Kellen Printing, and others. Students at CO2 participate in a half-day non-paid internship as well as learning opportunities in the area of post-secondary education and training, job training, independent living, and rec leisure. They will also work with students on other life transition goals, such as our student Hebo, who is pictured here, who worked with CO2 staff to assist her in preparation for her citizenship. Teachers also work with students to get connected in the community. They can work with financial aid for college, helping students find housing. They work with disability services and help them access other things that help keep our students moving forward in their lives. InStep is our other 18 to 21 program. InStep serves students with more moderate to severe disabilities. Students attending InStep are learning skills that allow them to access their greatest level of independence in their transition areas. InStep is currently housed at Discovery Elementary School, and students access job training and learning opportunities both on site and in the community, depending on the student ability and need. You may, if you frequent the district office, you may have seen them in the lounge, as in-students will regularly provide and host pop-up sales across the district, selling items that they've made in their work skills in the program. As with many programs, staffing limitations and COVID protocols have impacted some of the programming at InStep. Staff have creatively adjusted by moving to 2 internship opportunities across the school year instead of 3, and doing more of their job training on site. As CO2 does, InStep has several community partners that have been crucial in working with them to grow our student skills and experiences. Recent partners are Crafts Direct, Plato's Closet, Don Robinson Motors, Quality Inn Hotel, and Bonanza. Our district theme this year has been 742 Together. Nothing personifies that theme as much as watching one of our students come through our system and move successfully into independence. I'd like to introduce you to Ryan. Ryan came all the way through 740 schools. He attended Westwood, North, and then Apollo, and finished his 742 career at Community Options 2. Ryan received support along the way from many 742 educators. While at CO2, Ryan experienced a variety of job training opportunities while also participating in the post-secondary options program through St. Cloud Technical College. After some soul searching, Ryan fell in love with the culinary arts. He graduated from 742 last spring and has successfully transitioned to the culinary arts program at the Technical College. Ryan credits his district 742 and the CO2 program in contributing to his success. He exemplifies the 742 mission of providing a safe and caring climate and culture where we engage, inspire, educate, prepare, and empower our learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today and tomorrow's society.
As a district focused this year on the theme of 742 Together, we wanted our video to highlight how that theme is felt across our alternative programs. We hope you enjoy.
My name is Linda McGowan, and I have the Autism Classroom here at Katherine Johnson. So I work with students who have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. So I primarily work on teaching them different social skills, perspective taking, the hidden rules that a lot of kids don't, those people skills in mainstream school. He was unable to stay in class. There were an average of 50 swear words every 2 minutes, losing his temper, afraid to try anything new. Now, that is actually the student I'm looking at transitioning to North, because that's how much he's improved. And I have to say, it's not just me, it's the whole team here, because we truly do work together as a team. We'll get together and share about students and what works and what doesn't work. I'm very proud of him because he has come from here to here. He doesn't necessarily see it, but we all see how much progress he has made since he started in this program.
Well, I was at a different school and then I came here because of issues. I've been here for a while. I'm gonna start trying to go back to North.
When I first came to this school, after not being able to go to South anymore, I realized that it was relatively easy for me. That's kind of the gist of how the classes are here.
It was just hard for me transitioning from like 5 to 30.
Just alone is difficult. You have to essentially navigate on your own. That's really what the high school experience is about.
I'm learning how to get better and control myself a lot more. I think helping me at home a little bit. And when you have good relationships with the staff and the teachers, they can help you more and they'll be more comfortable. I think it's a great school and kids with behavior problems. It helps.
At the end of the day, the staff members here at this school, they're human too. I praise those individuals that come here to work every day with children who at times work a nerve. I like to say that this faculty as a whole is together. They work as a well-oiled machine, so to put it.
So, transition program with disabilities who continue to have transition needs identified on the IEP. CO2 is a partnership with St. Cloud State. On average, each trimester we have around a dozen community partners that we can reach out to, that we can work with to provide experiences, internships, who will serve as mentors for our students.
So this is your second year attending CO2. What would you say some of the biggest benefits for you have been?
Life in general, because you know that I had a rough time last year. CO2 helped out with finding me a place to work.
To this point, Justin, you've had the opportunity to participate in some of the internships. How have those internships helped you become a better worker?
Experience. As I work, I keep getting compliments from other coworkers and job coaches that I'm doing an amazing job, and I just never knew I was good at it.
What is your goal for the future, and how do you feel CO2 is supporting you?
CO2 is helping me to achieve post-secondary school and a job that can also support me during that time when I actually get the job that I want. I'll have the experience and references that I need on my resume to actually get stepping stones in between school. I think this program really should be like everywhere in an actual school, like another stepping stone of school. It's like the perfect environment for people like me. My mom keeps asking, do you like CO2? Do you like CO2? Because she's overprotective, and I don't know where I'd be without it.
So generally speaking, we get a phone call from Sean and Leslie stating that they have a fantastic crew that's coming on for each semester. And so what they do is they look at their strengths and place them in spots throughout Garvey or the university in which an associate that's with each student and helps them along the way, but does not do the work for them. My job is to assess if they are excelling in their area and to give my advice on where I do feel they would excel. So we have an individual, Troy, 20 plus years ago. He started off kitchen, got an opportunity with the grill in our pizza station, and really was at the grill. When he graduated, we hired him on, and he has been with the university for over 20 years. He knows the students, and then to have individual hockey team or the soccer team, the swim team, high five Troy and say, hey, we saw you at the game, it was great to see you. And I think together, we give skills to the CO2 students, then take out into the world. It is to see a student come in nervous, scared, feeling like they're going to be out of their element, and then to see them thrive, and then to be able to choose where they feel the most confident. We, as managers and fellow employees, just take such pride and humbleness in the abilities of each one of those students.
Together.
742 together.
742 together.
Thank you so much for your time tonight, allowing us to showcase our programs. At this time, we invite you to ask us any questions you may have. Scott?
How do you recruit a partner? You've got partners coming out your ears. How do you do it?
Lots and lots and lots of work on the ground. Some of those, the 18 to 21 teachers, have been there, quite a few of them, for a long time. And so some of those partners like Bonanza and Petter's Auto Body have been with those programs for years. Some of it's cold calls and showing up and saying, hey, we've got an opportunity here for you. Would you be interested in supporting kids? So it's a lot of work on the ground. Sometimes it's who you know, just kind of the same way we develop anything. So they have a lot of community partners that have been with them for a long time. And it's great. Like with CO2, you go to graduation and their community partners are invited and have the opportunity to kind of see that end. But it's great to see the reward from both ends for both the partners and they'll hire on a lot of times too. So it's exciting.
You mentioned a graduation. Is that the same as with the rest of the students, or is this a special graduation?
So our students go through, when they graduate from Tech and Apollo, they walk with their classes. So when they do their formal diploma isn't awarded until after they're done with their 1821 programming, but they do walk and participate in graduation with their classes at the high school to make sure they continue to have that opportunity and that experience. And then when they're done with CO2, they have a small private graduation at St. Cloud State where they invite their St. Cloud State partners and their community partners and their families and have an opportunity to talk about individually each kid. It's kind of amazing. And INSEP does the same thing. So,
what is your association with Clara's House?
We provide the educators that work with the students when they are admitted into the program.
The patients there are in-house? They live in at Clara's house or what?
Well, Clara's House, the K through 18 program, so they have an elementary program, middle school, high school program. Those are day programs. And then there is the Recovery Plus program, that is a residential program.
Okay. Is that similar to what you have with that new outfit that took over the
Yes.
children's home?
Newport Academy is also a residential program. Well, each program has a different skill set that they provide to students. So the Recovery Plus program is designed for students who are struggling with alcohol, drugs, different things like that. And then Newport Academy is for students who struggle more with anxiety, trauma, transgender, different.
Okay. I toured your building a while ago. Did you finally get the back side done?
Yes, on March 26th, we moved from the front of the Katherine Johnson building that is currently under reconstruction, and we are occupying the top back end, which will be the elementary program next year. So currently the 7th grade, 8th grade, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade program, the middle school program, is in the newly renovated part of the building.
Are you using the gym yet?
Yes, we are. We've used the gym all year.
Thank you. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Dr. Green?
I sort of heard about this, but not this. Is this unusual in school districts?
Which this?
This, what you just talked about?
The
Oliver?
alternative programming?
Yeah. Is it unusual for school districts around the state?
Schools are obligated to provide services and educational services for any care and treatment programs that are within their boundaries. So that would be expected. And 18 to 21 programs are also expected, as well as most districts have access to some sort of level 4 setting for programming. So I think we do an amazing job, and some of ours are, like I look at our 18 to 21 programs and some of our, we do a really good job at what we do. But every district is expected to provide those services in some way, shape, or form within their district.
In way, shape, or form, sort of.
Well, they do.
It's
like,
not
yeah.
the same as what you do.
Well, I think we do a really good job with what we do.
Okay. Community partner concept that Scott talked about, this it's a great presentation. Would really go well with, the Exchange Club and all the service clubs in the community to hear this and understand that this is a very interesting program. One of the guys, the young man that was explaining what you do for you, probably ought to be one of your teachers at some point. And I've known people who have been through some of these programs who, personal friends, and of the parents were my personal friends, and watched what they do to some kids, and even to the point where they get kicked out of the program because they learned too much, and they've learned too much, and they were doing so much better in the improvement. So I'm impressed, and I just think that it ought to be front page regularly in the newspaper, and those kids ought to be talking about what it did for them, how it changed their lives. So
I do want to say that all those answers the kids were giving were uncoached. Those were from their heart. When I first saw that video, it was beautiful, because the people that work in these programs every single day work very hard to meet the needs of these students, to build the relationships with the students, to work with the families, and to build a program that kids can feel safe and comfortable coming to every day, so they can practice the skills they need to go back to their home schools. So
I'll stop talking. I could talk about you all night, but so I will. Thank you very much for what you do.
Is this program, or are these programs for students within our boundaries only, or do we take students from other districts in also?
So the setting 4 alternative programs are for District 742 students. So the Katherine Johnson and the programs at the Roosevelt Education Center, yes, are for District 742 students.
And that's the CO2, is that?
So the only programs that would have out-of-district students in it are the care and treatment programs, because they're serving our entire area, and so we're serving anybody who attends. So, but our 18 to 21 programming and our setting 4 programming is District 742 students only.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, I think that you do a fantastic job, and I believe that the Roosevelt building and the Katherine Johnson building may have a substantial impact on the quality of the programming that we're able to provide, because we are taking those students out of a setting that you're not sending them to the same school. You're not sending them to Apollo and saying you're in this classroom, or I don't know how they do it in other school districts where they don't have facilities that are separated. And that's kind of my question, is how would you even run the program if you're unable to remove the student from the setting in which they were struggling to try and provide support?
So some of our smaller districts around us are in co-ops, and so they work within their co-op to have a level 4 program. For example, Benton Stearns has the Voyagers program, which serves their member districts, which is an alternate site program.
Okay.
Other smaller communities that don't have access to a service such as that will have what are programs on site that are like school within a school. And so when I first came into the district years ago, we had a program at the Discovery Elementary School that was called Behavior Education that served students that eventually came to me at Roosevelt, to us at Roosevelt, in our level or in our setting 4 program there. And so they're housed, or the house is a poor choice of words. They're serviced in a location where we just kind of create a school in a school opportunity when we don't have the facilities or resources to do it differently.
One of the things I mentioned at the last meeting, I made some comments about equity, and we were coached again in community input tonight that equity deserves no home in our school district. And again, I look at your programs, and that's the very definition of equity. We're taking students out of a normal classroom setting, and we're putting them into a setting designed specifically to meet their needs. And I know that person is referring to the national conversation over equity and CRT and some of the negative approaches that are taken around, but it doesn't to blanket say that equity doesn't deserve to be in a part of this district. Oh, it totally does. We have to. I think last week it was in reference to the English as a second language programs, where we're again taking students who have a specific need and we are teaching to them specifically what they need, but we're not teaching it to everybody. Equality doesn't work in that situation. We have to have some level of equity within the district. And again, I think your entire department is founded upon the principles of equity. So I think that's it. I thought I had another one, but I'll come back to it if I do. But thank you.
Monica?
So I have a question, maybe, first, you have done a great job. One thing about, so what's that CO2 stands for again?
Community Options 2.
And what is the 2 for?
I don't know, to be very honest. I don't know where the 2 came from. It's been CO2 since I started, but I can certainly get that information for you, Monica, and I will let you know.
I was just curious.
What? A long time, yeah. It's been, I haven't the slightest clue, but maybe there was a Community Options 1. I will find out and let you know. How does that sound?
Thank you. What? So I get curious when I'll start talking about the if we serve other students. This question might be for Amy. How do we fund these programs?
So there's really, it's a variety, and certainly if Kate and Brenda want to jump in, but there's really a number of different ways, and it depends on the program. So our level 4 alternative programs and our community options programs, those are part of the special education funding formula. So those are special education services, the same as how we would fund servicing our special education students in a regular setting. The care and treatment programs are a little bit different in that there's statutory authority to allow us to bill back any sort of unreimbursed costs to the member districts. So obviously if there's students attending who are 742 students, those unreimbursed costs are ours. However, oftentimes there are students from other districts, and so we're invoicing back those other districts for those costs that go above and beyond any general ed formula revenue or special education revenue that we're generating from those programs.
Could you tell us a little bit more about how do you, switching topics, how do you come up with the great partnerships that you have tell us about how has been that work in getting those partnerships, and how do you actively go and seek more, if you do?
Kind of like we said before, it's a lot of footwork. I can maybe give an example. Say a student comes and says, I am really looking to do something in my life. My passion is working I want to work with kids. Or I want to work in an area of care. We'll have a lot of kids who come through and they want to be, let's say they want to go into nursing. And maybe their skill set academically isn't at a spot where nursing is going to necessarily be a possibility, but what about that are you passionate about? What do you love? Well, I love to care for people. And so then we look for opportunities for kids to say, we've had kids work in, the VA is one of our close partners. And so it's communicating with the VA and it's calling up and saying, hi, I'm Sean Roquette. I'm calling from Community Options 2 program. And we have some students here who are looking at getting into and wanting to research or spend some time around caring for individuals or healthcare. Would you have an opportunity or something that we can do within your system? We provide job coaches, we provide on-site support. I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with you about it. And so then they will typically schedule an initial conversation with that partner wherever it lands. Sometimes they're specialized, like when I look at some of like the auto body, like Petter's Auto Body, sometimes that started because someone had a passion around that. And so then they went to Petter's Auto Body and they might call 3 people before they get one that says, yes, I'd love to sit down with you. And so it's really just taking time and opportunity. And once those relationships are built and the benefit is felt, they tend to stay on. And sometimes they work and sometimes it's a unique need where somebody goes and they don't go back to that particular site. But it's really working with the students. That's where it starts. It starts with what students need and where their passions are. And it moves from there with a lot of phone calls and meetings and salesmanship to some extent. And our kids sell themselves, to be very honest. Like once we get the kids in the room, it's easy.
Al?
I thought of my other comment. Just say one of the things that when I was watching the videos and actually the whole presentation that kind of struck me was the diversity of students that you work with. And by diversity, I'm not talking skin color, I'm talking diversity of where they're at in life. And it went from students who have cognitive issues, or you can just tell they're behind cognitively, to students who've grown up in abusive households, to students. I mean, the number of every student is an individual, and you guys probably face more unique individuals than most other areas in the school district. And to be able to have programming that addresses each one of them individually and gives them the resources that they need to move on to be successful in life. I mean, what a community builder, number one. If you don't build them, they tear down the community over time when they become adults. But to listen to some of those kids, and the one kid said his mother was overprotective or whatever, and I mean, he was referencing some things. And another kid said that he liked going to work because when he started working, people started saying, hey, good job, good job. Well, I've never been told good job in my life. And for kids to be able to experience that and come out of that and be able to lead a productive life, I mean, what a wonderful program. Because we have a lot of diversity of students within this district and a lot more lower income, less educated, more single parent, more renters, just a lot more poverty within this school district. And a lot of that comes out in how kids act when they're in a school setting. And some of the most extreme ones, I'm sure, are some of those that you see. I almost cheered the other day. I heard someone say on the radio something about Sartell. A neighboring school district doesn't have better schools. They have more 2-parent families, or in other words, they don't have better schools. They've got a lot more stable housing market and the people who work there would tend to be more educated and successful and able to hold jobs and things like that. Whereas when you get into an inner city setting, you have a lot more transitory parents that don't stay in a setting for very long. They don't necessarily provide the things the kids need. And to have a program or a set of programs where those kids can at least experience what they need to experience so that they themselves can go out and have a successful life, that's incredible. So, thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Jett?
So ladies, I guess what I'm going to say is the entire board. So I know that Al and Dr. Green and others, the two of you you don't always accept compliments the way that you should, or you don't always you don't necessarily like to you're humble. And so the board was trying to compliment you. Okay, and I watched you guys, because I know you, I watched you guys kind of dance a little bit, and I'm sitting there saying, stop. They're trying to tell you, extremely nice job. There was one moment where Al was highlighting the facilities, and we're blessed, because I've been in 3, 4, 5, 6, 18 different districts because I can't keep a job, and they don't have the facilities that we have. It is like you were talking about earlier. And so I just want to say to the board, thank you for providing that and supporting that, because that's not the normal. And our kids, when you watch that video, we're blessed that way. But what I had written down at first was, okay, Kate and Brenda, Mike was extremely eloquent. The video was powerful. It was insightful. And it showcases the wonderful work that does not necessarily get recognized in this community whatsoever. And so from me to you and from this board, and please accept this the right way and don't duck it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Summer Programming Planning, presented tonight by Laurie Posch, Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, and Beth Watkins, Director of Special Education Curriculum and Instruction.
Good evening, Board Chair Haas, Superintendent Jett, and school board members. Beth and I are here tonight to give you an overview of some of the plans that are in place for our summer programming. So I'm going to pull it up here, and we will get started. Summer 2022 programming. Hard to believe that we are here. And yet, as we wrap up this school year and do the planning for the summer and start looking at next year, there is a lot of planning and programming that is taking place as we speak. We know our mission statement, and as I mentioned last year, we really are all about fulfilling our mission all year long. So our mission, our programming, our learning doesn't stop on that last day of the school year. It continues into the summer. This year, we were really fortunate because we received some additional funding for our summer programs. And what we found, which is really no surprise at all, is that when we have additional funding, we have additional opportunities for our students. And you're going to hear about some of those tonight. Looking at our elementary programming, this year when we looked at some of the construction that's happening in the buildings, some of the transportation concerns that we have had out there, we decided to move our elementary programming to 2 sites for this summer. So our students will be attending either the Discovery or the Madison site. So we're kind of potting our students together. What that allowed us to do was to open up our field of teachers, to consolidate some of our transportation routes, and to increase the availability of our district nurses. We have some people who have been planning theme-based, and I'm looking at Mike because we kind of laugh about how I say this, so I won't say what I usually do. Some theme-based activities planned for this year. So we have a 6-week program this year for our elementary students, and each week has a different theme. So if you think about Van Gogh, the artist, one of our weeks is Go Big or Go Home. So it will have an art theme to it, weaving in both math and reading. We have a cooking craze week. Building masters, so we'll be working on some building activities, a gamer challenge, a camp out, and one week called To Infinity and Beyond. We also have been able to partner with a company that produces, it's called Camp Invention Curriculum. So we'll also be exploring some invention types of activities, some creativity, some problem solving, and again, all the while focusing both on math and reading as well. Our program is for students in grades K through 5 and will run from Monday through Thursday. As I mentioned, we have the increased number of weeks this year for our students and increased hours. We are looking to have approximately 500 elementary students participate in our summer programming for elementary. We also have hired a coordinator for each site who will be working on at our sites and overseeing those programs. At our middle level, we have programming that we're calling Crush Academy. This is a targeted services model, and it will be held at Tech High School for our students in grades 6 through 8. It will be 3.5 hours a day, and we were planning for 120 students. We are up to 150 students as of this week. This program is for our 6th through 8th graders who didn't pass 2 of their classes at least 2 trimesters. So really targeting some of those students, catching them up on skills, getting them ready for the high school. At our high school, we are bringing back from last year our Rising 10th Graders program. This is for Apollo and Tech students, and it will be held at SCTCC. In this program, it is for students who are identified by their counselors or by their teachers as either being at risk or being credit deficient already as 9th graders. So it's those upcoming 10th graders, kind of to give them a catch-up time. They will be earning credits. This program, they will receive a language arts credit, a math credit, and an elective credit during the summer. And we were really lucky to partner with the Office of Higher Education, and they are providing some additional funding for this program. We also have our traditional high school credit recovery, which is what we typically think of as summer school. This program is for Apollo, McKinley, and Tech students and is held at McKinley in the summer. We will plan to see about 500 students come through our credit recovery program. And in this program this year, with that additional funding, we are able to prioritize co-teaching. So we will have co-teachers in our courses to help our students with that credit recovery. With that additional funding, we also will be able to have some on-site social emotional support for the students during the day. And then, you know, one of my favorites, we are bringing back our Grow Your Own Future Teacher Academy. We have our 3rd cohort of students going through that this year. This is the program that is done in partnership with St. Cloud State University to hopefully increase our diversity of our teaching force as our students go through the programs. It's sponsored by the Minnesota Department of Education grant. We have about 30 students who have registered. We have our parent meeting this Saturday. The students do some extra work during the school year. Again, they earn college credit. We stay on campus, so we will be there from June 5th through the 10th. And then a couple of extra programs for our multilingual learners. Although all of our students are welcome to all of our programs, we have some targeted programming for our multilingual students. At the middle level, our North and South students will be participating in a program held at Tech High School. And last week they talked a little bit about this program. This is where we have the coding camp opportunity. We have the partnership with St. Cloud State, who will be coming and doing some math and science activities with our students. At the high school, we have a new program this summer, and that is, again, in partnership with St. Cloud State, and our students will be working on language arts writing courses, and they will be earning credit for their language arts credit as an elective credit. It's for both Apollo and Tech students, and it will be held at Tech High School.
In summer programming for students who have IEPs and learning needs, we're running a couple of different things, and I think I've been to you kind of recently to talk about them, but we'll recap them. We always provide extended school year for students with IEPs. That's an opportunity for students who have been identified all year round by their teams as having a set of unique needs, and have shown that previously when there's been a gap in learning, like over a summer break, that they have a difficult time recouping that gap. There's a regression and they cannot make up that in the same amount of time as what they missed, if that makes sense. And that we do every year for students, and we're layering that in, but there's certainly a larger number of students than we've had in other summers participating. And we are working at 3 sites this summer. Our early childhood students in ESY will be at Quarry View. Our elementary programs, all of our programs for special education are housed, I'm going to use that word, is that okay when I use it? Are being held at Oak Hill for elementary students and at Tech for secondary students. You see the theme that Tech is a busy place this summer. We have 190 elementary students and 130 secondary students coming. You can go ahead. We're 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday mornings on all of those programs. And then, of course, in response to really the state's guidance in helping us help kids who had disruptions in learning due to the pandemic and who experienced distance learning that created a lack of progress in their IEP goals, we reached out to all those families through the year, and we are inviting those kids in during the summer. 500 is a great number tonight. Our programs are running about 560 total students this summer, but some of them overlap and are taking advantage of both of these opportunities. So we have some early childhood kids coming for Quarry View. That's a pretty small number because a lot of those kids being young enough that the pandemic itself, they weren't schooled at that time to be impacted by distance learning in the same way. But we have quite a number of kids coming back for 3 separate weeks of learning at Oak Hill in literacy, in math, and then related services. That would be kids who have some speech goals, some developmental adaptive PE goals, and those sorts of things that they're working on during that time in a concentrated kind of way. And then our secondary students are going to be at Tech doing literacy, math, and related services, including job transition, and work experience at that time. Student Services then overall is providing, in addition to the great work that Shannon Avenson is doing, making sure that all of these programs and sites have nursing coverage this summer, they're putting some other supports in place as well. And chemical health counselor is going to be available for students because so many of our programs are centered at Tech. The counselor will also center there and be able to just turf questions from staff, be a resource, meet with students that are already known and or students that arise as needing that support in the summer. Mental health services will be provided at 2 different sites then during the summer, and this is new, not something that's been done before during summer months, but at McKinley during all the summer school programming to benefit the students there. We will have triage specialists to provide that district-wide triage response for secondary students and their families. And also at the early childhood program at Quarry View, these professionals are both LMFTs that are providing support for families during our summer programs.
And we would be remiss if we didn't mention the many, many community education opportunities that are available for our students and our families this summer. We also this year have been able to continue and expand some partnerships. So we have some area organizations who have reached out to us for some support in the services that they provide for our students this summer. So we have a partnership coordinator who is overseeing our partnership requests. We also will be able to provide some scholarships for some students to attend some community opportunities this year. And summer programming, I know this is a little hard to read, but summer programming is one of those areas that takes a village. We have mentioned several of these areas, but I do want to do some shout outs for a couple of areas. Our transportation and operations departments, Natalie Ratha at our transportation and her team, to be able to provide transportation, do the routes that kind of an almost last minute for the students that are participating. So a huge shout out to them. As we look at our many, many departments who have a piece in the planning of this, our administrative support at buildings for helping with registering students, for hosting in their buildings, the custodial staff who sometimes have to put their work off a few months to be able to have our students be there. Learning and teaching department, special education, health services. Beth mentioned Shannon Avenson, so Shannon and Jess Voss, and the work that our nursing team has done and will do to support our students this summer. And of course, our teachers. Our teachers have stepped up once again. When we put out the call for teachers for our summer programming, we had an overwhelming number of people who said, yep, I'll do that. I'll work again this summer. So just a huge shout out to everybody that makes this possible for our students. So never stop learning. We know that we have made this as a priority in our district, that our learning doesn't stop. We have slots to serve almost 2,000 students this summer, and that does not include the support that our partners are giving for our students or our community education classes. So we just want to do a huge shout out to everybody that will be serving our students this summer. And we'll open it up for questions. Scott?
And then Monica?
Earlier on in your presentation, you mentioned something about camping. Is there any association with the scouting programs?
There isn't. It's one of our themes for our camp, so it will be held site, but we are going to give them some experiences that mirror camping.
It's not quite the real thing then.
Not quite the real thing.
Okay.
But there's always next year, Scott. Put those ideas in my head.
Another partner. Crush Academy, it almost sounded like credit recovery over at McKinley. Is it the same thing or is it different?
It's similar, but it's for our middle school students. So our middle school students earn the credits like our high school students earn, but it is for students that had a rough year and maybe need to gain some of those skills. So they aren't earning the actual credits, but they're earning some skills to help them be successful next year.
Grow Your Own. Has it produced any teachers yet?
Well, we have. For them to have graduated from our schools and college. We have our first student who was part of our program graduating this year, but he decided to go into aviation. But he has come back. He's going to be one of our counselors this year to support our students who are at camp. We also have another student who was very, very shy, and some of you might remember she came and she spoke after our first opportunity and was not real outgoing at first, and she now is the head of one of the student organizations at St. Cloud State, and she is coming back to be a counselor as well. So we're getting closer.
Okay. One of my kids had an IEP years ago, and
Mine too.
it at that time it didn't seem like it extended into summer school automatically. When did that happen?
It has been a long-standing, but it's a really specific group of unique needs. So it's unique needs that that are specific to a group of students who have functional academic needs, and then they've shown that when they take a break from school, if they are not able to recoup what they lose in that amount of time. And so it is usually a relatively small group of students that participate. This year we're a little bit bigger, but it's an elite and unique group.
Okay. Are there any programs for kids that have graduated but they're not 21 yet? Or once they're graduated, they're out of here?
Are you speaking first to me or to Lori?
Doesn't matter.
So, of course, in special education, we do serve students up to age 21, and so students who are in our 18 to 21 programs may also participate in summer programming as well to meet those IEP needs that have not yet been met.
Well, how about the kids that have graduated, but they graduated during the time of COVID, and they missed a lot of stuff? Is there anything available for them? Or graduation?
I would say that's where we have our adult basic ed courses, our community ed courses, so we have opportunities for all ages to participate through that program.
Okay. I've heard of something called Hope Squad. It seems to be a program where peers provide mental health counseling to other peers. Have you heard of such a thing?
I have not. But, and I am not usually here in front of you speaking about mental health, but I will make sure when I get back to the office, I talk to Shannon Avenson about how we use peers, if we use peers for mental health counseling. We have a lot of great pieces in place, but that's one I've not heard of.
I understand that the peers that get involved, they actually give them 6 months of training before they actually start interacting with others. And the members are actually chosen by students because they already trust them. Something to look into. It's called Hope Squad. Thank you. Good job.
Monica?
This is very nice. I like the programming that we're having for this summer. Tell me a little bit more about so you said that you choose the two schools because of transportation and construction and stuff, but you also mentioned some advantages about having the two schools and having kind of the consolation of teachers and something about transportation. So could you tell me a little bit more about how is disadvantages in transportation, since the school has, kids will have to go out of the normal boundaries to that school, and expand a little bit more in those advantages that you were mentioning? So is that something that you may consider like an experiment and continue to do that way? Or yeah.
It is, and I'll let Gary, he left. Gary or Mike chime in too about transportation. But as we looked at the routes and where we saw potentials for students, as transportation worked through that, they were able to consolidate a few routes to maybe pick up and cover different neighborhoods to transport. So we plan to do, here he comes, we plan to do kind of a north and a south side building. Gary, the question was about benefits to having the two sites for transportation this summer. Do you want to take that one?
Sure. It's we really had two challenges this summer. Our two choke points would be transportation and nursing for folks to go around, or for enough staff and resources to go around. What we're able to do is split the city into a north side, south side, able to pick up students for the elementary routes, go back out and pick up the secondary students, have a little break, take the secondary students home, and then take the elementary students home. And so just with that many runs, with the number of drivers available, we needed to consolidate, find central locations and go from there. cost efficient too.
And I would say, Monica, part of this also will be an assessment this year to see if we have continued increased attendance as you get to those last few weeks of summer school. Oftentimes, historically, we would see some of our attendance fall off where children might not continue to participate. Now having a more robust transportation for kids on both the north side and the south side, we're hoping that our attendance will continue to be high throughout all 6 weeks.
Thank you. Another question was about so it sounds like the crash program is kind of I don't know how to describe it properly. Why don't you tell me more about how do you catalogate the crash program? And that is something that is completely new, correct?
It's similar to what we've done in the past, except that it's at one location this year. So the idea actually came from our high school staff, so our administrators in each building. And what the hope is that the CRUSH program, and again, CRUSH comes from the multi-cross district programming, so that's where the name came from. The hope is that as they work on some of those skills that the students may have missed during the year, and they work on some of the social emotional skills, they also can do some activities that really engage the students. So we know that sometimes our middle level learners are going through a lot at the time, and for some of our students, school maybe isn't the main focus. However, we see so much potential in them, and this summer allows that learning to continue, to help get them re-engaged or engaged in school, and to be active participants in their learning. Anything you want to add to it, Dr. Putnam?
So I think that I'm correct, and you correct me if I'm wrong. This year specifically has been a hard year for middle school students. Is that correct? Does this program comes as a result, or as not as a result, but to address those needs that presented those students? And I believe that they come from the pandemic, that it was because of the pandemic.
We're both shaking our head. I would say yes. We have had middle level programs before, so we've had targeted services programs. But I think this was a way for our middle level staff to re-envision what it could look like for the summer for our students that have maybe had a harder time transitioning back into a school setting.
So is this program also available for fifth grade students that are going into sixth grade?
It is not. So the way that some of the funding, so program is paid for out of targeted services, and that part of the program is paid for by 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And part of the criteria that they established was that it was current 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who did not, as I mentioned, didn't pass 2 of their courses at least 2 trimesters. So that was real specific to our middle level programming. Our 5th graders would attend our elementary programming.
So do we have any type of programming? So I'm also concerned about the transition between 5th grade and 6th grade, that it seems like was the biggest issue for our schools this year. So are you considering that and doing something in the summer about those 5th graders?
I don't think there's summer programming for that, but they did host an open house this spring where our students and our parents could attend, and they had a more robust program for that than they've had in the past.
The other thing I would add is that our 5th graders came to our middle schools during the day and did the tours led by our web leaders, so students led students. They had a whole assembly in the auditorium. So we haven't been able to do that in the past several years, obviously. So that was past practice that we were able to reinstate to help with that transition. That can be a scary thing if you haven't seen your school. So we worked with Dr. Rivard and the 5th grade team to make that happen.
Well, I'm not going to let you out of the hook without telling me what is happening with arts in the summer.
Well, hopefully you heard that in our elementary programming. That was real intentional in our elementary program planning. So we have, the art in there. We have, I know community ed has many offerings as well, but Monica, no, it's always in our forefront when we're planning. We do have, and I'm going to draw a blank on the name of it. There is a music program that's held every summer. I don't think so. It's at Apollo. I'll find the name of it for you.
Okay. And Mr. Jett?
The Learning and Teaching Department. So the one thing I just want to throw out there was there's always great work that's done in the summer. It doesn't matter what summer it is, there's always great work. But this summer in particular, it's critical, especially with what's been going on the last couple of years with the stressed learning environments, whether it's at home or if it's in person. And so Lori and Beth and all the folks and all the individuals who've assisted with the thinking, the planning, the strategy of this in terms of our summer programming coming up for our students in this district during this time, just thank you for that wonderful work. And I heard you talk about community partners and everything else that's going on. This is just a snapshot. This is just one of those moments that's symbolic of the wonderful things that happen within that department. So thank you.
I forgot to do a shout out to Brianne Hearn. And Brianne has been just our central place planning this year. So she is the organization behind everything from rooms to transportation to everything. So I do that shout out to her.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to discussion and action items. First up, we have an action item. It's the resolution rescinding resolution adopted on September 18th, 2019, and resolution approving property tax abatements, proposed granting of business subsidy, and authorizing execution of tax abatement agreement. Presented by Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services.
Good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Jett, members of the board. Once again, I will apologize for the length of the name of the agenda item. I don't determine what the resolutions are named, I just bring them forward. So part of the reason that it is a little bit of a mouthful is because we're actually moving forward and taking reaction on an item that the board already approved in 2019. So part of the resolution is to rescind the previous approval because it's no longer valid. It was too long ago. As a reminder to the board, what we're talking about with this resolution is the property tax abatement that Trobix had requested. So that was initially brought forward to the board in August of 2019. We did the public hearing. At that time, no one came forward from the public with any questions or concerns. The board approved the abatement agreement and the resolution in September of 2019, and the City Council of St. Joseph had also previously approved it. And then COVID happened and the construction got delayed and everything obviously got disrupted with transportation, and looking forward at economic development was not Trobix's priority when we were in the middle of a pandemic and had staffing shortages and all of that we're well aware of. Now they're at the point where they're ready to move forward again. Just to kind of recap what the building plan is, it's to relocate a new facility in St. Joseph in their new industrial park. It's about 108,000 square foot facility. The total project cost is about $8 million. That is about $1 million more than what the total project cost was when they applied in 2019 for a few reasons. Part of that is change in scope of work, paving some areas that were previously going to be gravel, but then a lot of that is just increased construction costs that have happened with inflation, supply chain disruptions, all of those things. So because of that increase in the cost, the abatement amount has increased from what the board initially approved. The initial approval was for $140,000, which was to be spread over 7 years. The current request is not to exceed $275,780, still spread over the same 7 years. Just as a refresher to board members, the way a school district taxes, we don't actually lose any revenue when we approve a tax abatement. It just changes how it's spread to taxpayers, and it really has a very minimal effect. The actual abatement schedule ends up equating to about $39,000 per year, and it's really just deferring that payment of taxes for the entity. The abatement would first take its effect in tax year 2024. In your agenda packet is a copy of the tax abatement application that was submitted to the city. It's almost identical to the application that we would have reviewed and was attached in 2019, with the exception of the reflection of the increased costs. The abatement schedule is in the board packet, as well as the resolution and the abatement agreement that would be executed if the board approves. Finance Committee has reviewed the information and is in support of approving or of moving forward with the abatement. Are there any questions?
Scott?
Yes, it's basically they'll be not paying taxes for 7 years, and that tax burden will fall on everybody else. How much is that tax burden on everybody else?
So it's not that they don't pay the taxes, they don't pay taxes on the increase in the capacity. And so really when a business comes into an area, essentially that should lower really each other taxpayer's obligation because it's increasing the capacity. So they're still paying the same amount of taxes that they would be paying currently. They just don't have to pay the taxes on the increase in the valuation of their property based on the improvements. And so for us, if we're taking that $38,000 and not collecting that in the form of an abatement, we're talking about pennies on the dollar that any individual taxpayer would see. And we're likely in any given year going to have other increases in valuations and tax capacity that is going to offset that. The other factor with from a tax that Trobex is currently has their primary facility in St. Stephen, which is outside of the district boundary. So we're actually bringing that tax capacity into our district boundary, which is going to be a positive for taxpayers because it's increasing the capacity. And from a school district resident, the school portion, we may actually see our individual taxpayers see a slight reduction because that's coming into our tax base.
After 7 years?
Even initially, because the existing tax that they're paying, they'll still be obligated for, and that existing tax base hasn't been part of our tax capacity in the past.
Now, the location has changed a little bit since the first time around?
So the location is functionally the same. It's really just shifted forward a little bit. We're kind of two lots that were connected, and they weren't on the corner. They were in the middle of a lot. Another developer or company was interested in the other half. So they've really just shifted kind of over on the lot so that they're on the corner, which they're actually excited about. Having the corner access for buses in and out will be more convenient for them. But in terms of the general geographic location, the industrial park, it's very similar to what it was previously.
Thank you.
I would move the resolution rescinding resolution adopted on September 18th, 2019, and resolution approving property tax abatements, proposed granting of business subsidy, and authorizing the execution of a tax abatement agreement.
Second.
Have a motion? Have a motion by Al and a second by Monica. Is there any further discussion? Dr. Green, can you please call roll?
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Zach Dorhold.
Yes.
Les Green is yes. Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Scott Andreasen.
Yes.
Okay. Next up is another action item, approval of projects from bond funds, presented by Amy Scallard, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, and Gary Ganji, Executive Director of Operations.
Good evening. We are going to present some information that we presented at Finance earlier this week, last week. Yes, we're in a new week here. And this has to do with some remaining funds. Amy's going to talk a little bit about the funds first, and then I will talk about the projects.
So just a refresher, we're talking about the 2017 bond, or sorry, 2017A bond account. We came to the board previously with a number of projects at about $2.6 million that the board previously approved, with the most significant of those being the remaining elementary controlled entrances, and then the south bus and parking site configuration improvements, among some other smaller projects. So at that time, we had conservatively estimated what would be left in the bond account. Since then, some of those projects have closed out. There's some additional funds that are available, totaling approximately $230,000. And so you'll see up on the screen what administration is recommending in terms of how we would allocate those funds. We've really primarily focused on, as with the previous round of projects that were approved, looking at things that we have no other funding source for. So we don't want to use those remaining proceeds for things that could come out of LTFM, or that we could apply for some sort of grant to fund. We're really focusing on kind of those outliers where we don't have good funding sources. And our outdoor facilities has been one of those that has been kind of a repetitive theme. We had some of those identified in the first round. So a lot of this is really just kind of overall landscape architecture, reseeding of areas, that might be bare, really just making our buildings welcoming from the outside. So that's $160,000, and Gary will go over a few more details on that. $40,000 for the Oak Hill walking path, and $30,000 for some tree replacement. And I'll turn it back over to Gary, and he can elaborate.
All right, on the landscape architecture, probably recall when we did an update of projects last summer, we talked about the Roosevelt site, and we had partnered with the Optimist Club and just did some things to spruce up that area. They painted some basketball courts and put in some planters and refreshed a sign, cleaned up some playground equipment and things like that, just to make it more warm and welcoming. This year, what we're doing is we're taking a look at a couple sites to do that sprucing up. One would be Madison. If you think about the north end of the building where the office is, and then the northwest end, which be closer to the former Catholic school, we have the media center, office and media center, and there's some plants there that have been there forever. They're overgrown, and they just don't look real good right now. And so that's an area that we're going to target. Also at Lincoln, another school in the neighborhood, we're going to look at sprucing that up a little bit and trying to make it look a little bit warmer and exciting around there. For both of those projects, we will work with community groups. We have a group in mind for both schools that have showed an interest in helping us volunteer, so that once we do these upgrades, then we have some community folks that can partner with us to help us with some of the maintenance of that and keep those up. We've sent out some initial quotes on these projects. We haven't picked some particular plants. I'm just going to mention at Board Finance, it came up about if we looked at native plants because of the lower maintenance. And so we are looking at those. Our initial findings are that the native plants do better in larger areas, but we're still looking at that to see what we can do with that. You'll see a couple, and then on the bottom we have, just around the district, we're going to do some reseeding. We're going to do some aeration, some various shrubbery replacement where things aren't looking good, and some other planting. If you look at the pictures there, you'll see the top picture shows around sidewalks. We get winter kill there from chemical on the sidewalk, as well as we're a school, and students will pick the most direct path to go from point A to point B, which may not be where we've put sidewalks, and so we get some things that are worn down. The middle picture is what I was talking about at Madison, and then the bottom picture just shows some of that shrub replacement, but not very well. So. The second area that Amy mentioned was the Oak Hill walking path. We've mentioned before, but we haven't really gone into too in depth. So I just want to mention that each year we work with the area planning organization, and we work on 2 schools where we take a look at how safe it is to get to school, what obstacles we have, what we can do a little bit better. It's an exciting process. This year we did Oak Hill and Kennedy. I really enjoy it because it brings in representatives from the city, from the county, from law enforcement, from the school district, of course, and we really take a look at what we need to get kids to and from school safely. And all those people I mentioned are just wonderful partners in this process. Well, when we did Oak Hill this year, we came up with a number of findings, and a number of these findings end up in the city or county in their court, things that they need or that they could improve. And an example of it would be over on 9th Avenue South. When we had done South, it was determined that we had kids crossing that weren't at the crosswalk, and this summer the city's planning on putting in a controlled crosswalk there, and that came out of a safe school study, which is really cool. But at Oak Hill, what we found was they did a wonderful job on Oak Grove Road, County Road 134 last summer. It looks real nice. But one thing that happened was a new sidewalk was put in on the northwest, coming into the northwest corner of the property, and where the sidewalk ends, there's no sidewalk across the driveway. It's the front of Oak Hill School. We have a ditch there for runoff. And so the first day of school, kids were walking. They got there and there's nowhere to go. So what they have to do is they have to go down the driveway where we have buses going in and cars coming out. And I don't need to say how problematic that is. Oak Hill has done a good job of staffing that to keep students safe. But one of the things that we want to address is up there and on F, it's that green circle. That green, is it? No?
Green,
Yeah,
yep.
thank you. We definitely want to put a sidewalk there, and then we'd run it across and then put a crosswalk in there. We'll still have to staff that, but it will be much safer. Also out of the study came some other improvements on some of the walking paths on site, and our priority is to do that first one I mentioned, the sidewalk, and then we'll see how far the funds go, and we'll see what other improvements we can do there. And then the final one is just tree replacement. We've talked about trees before. We have trees that don't make it from year to year. We want to go through our properties and do some replacement. We already know we have some trees at Apollo and Tech, and we got a few others that we're keeping an eye on. And then along with it, you can't plant a tree and expect it to grow unless you have rain like we've had the last couple weeks. So we wanted to call out hydration. We may need to lease a tanker truck now and then, but we want to make sure that we give these trees a fighting chance to survive. So those are the 3 areas that we're targeting, and just a little bit more info on them. Any questions?
Regarding shrubbery, shrubbery can get big or it can stay small. And if you get big shrubbery, all of a sudden you got a place for bad guys to hang out and cause trouble. Are we being selective in what we choose and where we put it?
Absolutely. Some of you are involved in the safety summit we did before we built Tech High School, and one of the considerations was the foliage around there, to make sure that we didn't plant anything that grew too high or too low, that we had clear sight lines. and that it wouldn't interfere with cameras or line of sight by staff. So it's definitely a consideration.
Okay, so this is an action item.
I would move the approval of projects from bond funds.
Second.
I have a motion by Al and a second by Monica. Is there any further discussion? Dr. Green, can you please call roll?
Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz,
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Les Green is yes. Zach Dorhold.
Yes.
Scott Andreasen.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, next up is a discussion item, potential land donation, presented by Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services.
Okay, I'm just trying to get this zoomed in a little more. So I will give a little bit of context before everybody tries to figure out where this map is located. So we are talking about land that's adjacent to Westwood Elementary School. So you can see on the drawing, Westwood off to the far left of the screen. Everything highlighted in yellow is what we'll be talking about. So we were contacted a few weeks ago by a realtor with information of a family who was interested in donating land to the district. In total, there are 5 parcels. It's a total square footage of 192,000 square feet of land. The majority of that land is vacant land. There's nothing on it. However, Lot 3, which you can see is kind of down to the middle portion, middle left side, does have a house. The house is approximately 1,900 square feet. And then Lot 2, which is just to the right of that lot, right where the arrow is pointing, has a small shed. Other than that, it's really vacant land. The taxable value of the 5 combined property or parcels is about $873,000. However, we all know taxable values are usually lower than market values, and so the market value obviously would likely be higher than that. If we decide to move forward and the board has an interest in accepting the land, the property owner would, at their expense, have an appraisal done. They would obviously need that for tax purposes, and that is what the board would then accept as a donation. So we initially, as an administration, started talking about the land. Generally, we wouldn't be in the business of acquiring residential homes. They don't typically have an educational good intended use. They also have carrying costs that are associated with them, insurance, minimal liabilities, so pipes don't freeze, and potential future liabilities that can arise. And so when we first started conversations, we expressed that to the donor. The donor's preference is that it's all lumped together, but has expressed that they would be okay with the district then selling that as a residential home, since we wouldn't have an intended purpose for that, and keeping the proceeds to use at their discretion. The current estimate that a realtor provided on combined lots 3 and 4, because lot 4 is really a very small lot. It's not really buildable as a standalone lot because it's so narrow. Their recommendation from a real estate standpoint would be to keep those 2 bottom left lots together and sell them together, and that would have a combined valuation they're estimating of approximately $300,000. So the district, if we intend to move forward, administration's recommendation would be that we would list that for sale, and then those proceeds would go into a reserve fund balance and could be designated by the board for some future use. As far as timing, the donor has an interest in getting the property transferred as soon as possible. The district also has that same interest if we decide to move forward. Collectively, the taxes on the combined lots are approximately $25,000. In order to not pay taxes for calendar year 2023, we have to acquire the property by June 30th so that we can apply for tax exempt status by July 1st. The one consideration with that that board members need to be aware of is that the house does currently have a tenant. There's a lease agreement in place through June 30th. The property owner has reached out to that, excuse me, that tenant. The tenant does not have an interest in buying the property and expressed that they would be intending to move out at the latest by June 30th, potentially earlier. So what the district, in order to protect ourselves, what would be the recommendation if we move forward would be to accept the other 4 lots in June so that we can apply for tax exempt status. We would wait and not accept lot 3 until after July 1st. Once the tenant has vacated, we can have a building inspection done, and then we would close on that lot at a later date. We would be obligated for the taxes for 1 more year, which is a little over $2,000, so not a significant liability, but it really protects us because we don't want to acquire a house and then have something come up after the fact while the tenant's still living there, and we certainly don't want to be in the business of being a landlord because we have other more important educational matters to tend to. So that would be the recommendation if we move forward, is to treat them as 2 separate transactions. So in terms of next steps, if the board kind of collectively feels that this is something that we would move forward with, we would look at signing a letter of intent. A letter of intent is non-binding. It doesn't obligate us to anything, but it really just gives that donor basically an indication that we're seriously interested in moving forward. And then we would order an environmental appraisal. There's been a whole bunch of site surveys and things like that done on the property that the owner will provide us, but there hasn't been an environmental assessment done, so we would want to do that. And then we would look at bringing purchase agreements back to the board, likely on June 1st, so that we could, again, schedule that closing and get everything transferred so that we meet that deadline for tax exempt status. So that's kind of the background. Finance Committee did review this information at the meeting last week and recommended bringing it forward as something that their recommendation was that we would want to consider. Are there questions? This is not an action item. This is just for discussion, to bring information. And then we obviously, want to get some sense on whether we want to move forward or if the board says, no, we're not interested.
How quickly did you say you could get an environmental study?
So the environmental study takes weeks. So we would order it now, and then the purchase agreement would be contingent upon the results.
Okay.
So just like the purchase agreement for the house itself would have a contingency for a building inspection and a final walkthrough. No different than if, you approve or purchased a residential home, you approve the purchase agreement, but there's financing contingencies, inspection contingencies, all of that, because it's not likely that we would get that completed before the June 1st date to bring the purchase agreement forward.
Scott? And then Dr. Green?
I went for a walk up there the other day, and it seemed like about half of those lots on the south side were covered with water. That's the Sauk River there, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So we went and toured the property prior to the river rising. It is beautiful. It is a very scenic area, which is part of the district's administration's intention of potentially being interested, is there's some educational value with the access to the river and having that sort of setting. Yes, about 3 days later, the water came up. It is technically in a floodplain. That would be disclosed when we sell it. The valuation that they've assessed on the property already has taken that into effect, with it being water property that's desirable. And there's ways to mitigate that with, landscaping and things like that. But just as an awareness, any buyer would have to have floodplain insurance if they're going to have a mortgage on the property because of the location, and the valuation already factors that in. It would be higher as a waterfront property based on the size of the lots if it weren't in that floodway.
What is the educational value? Can you give me some idea what we would do with this property to make it of use?
That's probably Lori or Mike's more area of expertise.
I get the pleasure of going to tour the properties. There are several ways that we would be interested in using it educationally, and we did speak with Principal Branton, and he is all for acquiring this. There's a, I think that's Lot 5, is a beautiful space where we could, if the school chose, we could have a garden. And we're also not that far from Katherine Johnson Center and Apollo. So while it is across from Westwood, there are other schools in the vicinity that could access this. Katherine Johnson specifically being landlocked, right, without access to wild spaces. And then as you go, as you know, because you walked it, as you go down, if you get towards 2 and 1's a little weedy, we're probably not going to want to clear through the brush, but 2 provides tremendous access to the waterway. And Amy and I saw little baby geese. I think they were geese.
Geese or ducks?
Or ducks.
I think they were ducks.
I should probably go.
don't know.
I'm going to need to go to a 5th grade biology.
I'm not a
I
science
guess.
teacher.
They're a waterfowl. They're little baby waterfowl. So there is already wildlife there. And so while we would be very cognizant of water safety and make sure that our students weren't getting too close to the river, it would provide a nice space for observation. We can, at Kennedy, we were blessed with being able to go and observe in the prairie and use that for math or poetry or science. And so this would be providing an opportunity to our schools on that side of town for educational benefit.
Yeah, so you're talking about the 2 lots kind of in between 1 and 5 there? Yeah. Homes. One of them is actually owned by one of the family members who is looking at donating the land, and then the other one is an unrelated owner. Our, intention is not to acquire those. We're not looking at building a structure or anything. Those, as far as we know, homeowners would intend to stay in those homes.
I actually wanted to hear from Al in terms of what his opinion is.
My opinion is that it's a great spot. I mean, first of all, it's a very generous donation. Very generous donation to the school district. It provides access to a nature area for a school that doesn't have a nature area. And other schools in the district like Kennedy, like Talahi, the Talahi Woods, like Clearview has the Clearview Woods. A lot of our elementary schools have those types of properties and they use them a lot. And I think this is just a wonderful opportunity for that school, for Westwood. I can't see any reason why we wouldn't. I agree with everything Amy said about selling the lot 3 and 4. But I would say that there wouldn't be any property tax liability if we were able to sell that in the second half of this year. We wouldn't have any liability next year. It would go to the new owner, right?
Yes. So assuming it would sell, those would be potentially prorated, as long as it sells. I mean, there's always that potential liability that if it doesn't sell for whatever reason that we would end up with taxes. But given what's right now, I would not suspect that we would have an issue selling the property.
The other thing that I would say, Les, is that property has been looked at by the city year after year, and they've really wanted to develop that property into some type of retail or, some type of commercial use. And if that happens, the way they're going to route all that traffic is right around our school. And right now, Westwood sits on a street with barely any traffic. And if that turned into a commercial development, that would just totally increase the traffic and harm the safety surrounding Westwood and students being able to get around. So I see a lot of benefits to it. And again, it's a very, very generous donation.
Seems that way.
Mm-hmm. It's $1 million donation. We don't see a lot of those.
Monica?
Yeah, I agree with that, Al. And thank you for the honor for that. I just want to say that. I missed something about the intention to sell 4 and 3. 3 is a house, and we wanted to sell it because it's a house. And then 4 doesn't have a house, right?
Correct, but with 4 not being connected to any of the other property that the district would own, and it's a relatively narrow piece of land, there's currently a garden on it that the property owner is using, but in terms of providing, parking in a yard and things like that, there really isn't any intention of selling that separately. It's really too small for somebody to build a new home on it, in terms of building restrictions with how far you'd have to be from property lines and from the water. And so there really, in our mind, wouldn't be value in keeping 4 or value in selling 4 separately. And so the realtor's recommendation is that 3 and 4 would be sold combined as a package deal.
Go ahead, Al. So,
There's no.
right,
No.
but it sounds like everybody's in support of
Okay,
this.
so we will move forward with next steps. The realtor will draft a letter of intent that we can sign and get to them this week. And then we would expect to see the 2 separate purchase agreements, one for the home lot with a anticipated closing in July, and a second for the other lots come forward at the June 1st board meeting.
Thank you.
By delaying the one lot until July, is that going to affect their tax write-off?
So it won't, because the tax goes off of the calendar year. So for their purposes, really, they have until the second half of the year to have that transaction, but it's more, they just want it to kind of be done. And it's clearly to our benefit to have the majority of it transfer in June, so that for the land we are acquiring, with the majority of the taxes being on Lot 1, which is that large lot, we certainly don't want to miss that deadline and have to pay those property taxes for 2023.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Another discussion item, proposed revised board policy 506, student discipline, presented by Tracy Flambeau, Executive Director of Human Resources.
Good evening, Chair Hawes, board members, Superintendent Jett. Let me just get my display up here. Okay, I am filling in this evening for Carol Potter, who is not able to be in the meeting tonight, and going back over the student discipline policy 506 on the items that were addressed at the last reading by the board. So the first changes in the policy from the first reading is in that first paragraph, and simply that's been cleaned up to make that paragraph less redundant. So it now reads that the St. Cloud Area Schools recognizes that expected school behavior, as outlined in the Code of Conduct, Rights and Responsibilities, is critical to academic success. It is the intention of this policy to ensure a safe and effective learning environment for all students and a safe working environment for staff. So that was just a cleanup of that paragraph. You'll see then that term expected school behavior has been kind of used then consistently throughout the policy, and that's been highlighted. The second area that the board discussed with Carol last reading was the issue about naming parents/legal guardians. And I know you had a lengthy discussion. I listened in on a bit around how best to do that. I think after reviewing it again with Carol, that we made the judgment that it makes the most sense to just go back to the MSBA model language that says parents/legal guardians, and you'll see that corrected throughout the policy. There are many variations on a theme legally in both of those terms, and typically what happens is that those, whenever there's a question about a parent's legal authority or legal guardian's authority, schools consult with me. I review the custody orders or other orders that we're getting from guardians and make sure that we're responding appropriately to the legal rights of the parties involved. The next change, I'm not driving and talking at the same time very well. Discussion at the first reading regarding the confiscation of items that would be inappropriate at school. And so we've cleaned up that paragraph to just indicate that either school district personnel or law enforcement may confiscate items that would violate school policies or state or federal law, and that they would be returned to the parent or legal guardian, again, if not claimed by the end of the school year. Or disposed of. And then I think to address the question that you had raised, Al, that if a student is 18 years of age or older, we restored that language because that makes sense to keep that. And they would be able to get those items back at the end of the school year. And then the last area I think that there was a question about was on page 10. In paragraph 4, discussing the provision of homework materials during a suspension, and I think the question was whether or not we should leave the policy at 5 consecutive days, or should that be earlier to get homework help to students sooner. I think there was a discussion by the board members, and I certainly concur in that we would want the policy to reflect the statutory standard of 5 days. But Carol is working with her team to change the notice of suspension checklist to indicate that we would try to provide homework as soon as it were possible, so that we would, in most cases, be providing it much sooner than the 5-day limit. I think those were the changes that she wanted you to review. Any questions about any of those? Okay.
Okay, looks good. Then moving on to Board Policy 516, proposed revised student medication.
And the only change in that policy at the first reading was to update the name of the form that parents fill out. So I don't believe there are any questions, and it's a second reading. So I won't bother projecting that.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to reports. We have the superintendent's report. Willie Jett, superintendent is 742.
Good evening, Chair Hawes, members of the board. And so each year, the National Center for Women and Information Technology issues the Aspirations in Computing Awards to high school students who show great promise in computing. Applicants from across the state compete for this award. This year, 2 Apollo students have been awarded the Affiliate Rising Star Award for their computing-related achievements and interests. Congratulations to Reese Grimsley and Josephine Vomard. Next, each spring, Resource Training and Solutions celebrates the accomplishments of the region's top-performing high school seniors at the Students of Excellence Banquet and Recognition Ceremony. This year's recipients are, from Apollo, Jackson Gerard, Josie Hamry, Callan Hansett-Brill, and Noel Hackemuller. From Tech, Annabelle Walk, Paulo Rivera, Faizine Ahmad, and Dylan Paulson. Congratulations to those students. Next, Apollo alumnus Sam Brewer and Tech seniors Faizine Ahmad and Famo Abdi are among the first recipients of Mayor Dave Kleiss's St. Cloud Youth Building Award. This was presented at St. Cloud City Hall, formerly Tech High School. And for many of us that were there, it was nice to see our students recognized in front of the entire community. Next, Westwood, their VEX Robotics team, the biohackers. They took second place. I'll say it again, the biohackers. They took second place at the World Championships. So congratulations. And the biohackers team consists of Nathan Millerbrand, Aiden Gorder, and Mario Savatei. And Apollo's, we need to say Apollo to a student at Apollo. Congratulations goes out to Apollo's Emily Gustafson for her second school record of the season. So this is track. And Emily ran an 11-minute, 51-second race in the 3200, breaking the school record set in 2009. Congratulations to Emily. And lastly, the St. Cloud Police Department is putting on an art contest, making sure that Monica heard that. They're putting on an art contest for the St. Cloud youth. They will be designing front license plates for 33 marked squad cars. The contest is open to any St. Cloud area student between the ages of 5 and 17. Submissions will be accepted until this Friday, May 20th. There will be a drop-off site for submissions at each school site, at the front desk of the police department, at the cop house, at the Boys and Girls Clubs, and the cop house email. A total of 33 winners will be selected to have their design displayed on police squad cars. The informational flyer and artwork template can be found on the district website. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you. Then Board of Education Standing Committee reports. We have one report tonight, Board Finance and Audit Committee Chair Al Dahlgren.
Mine will be very quick. We met last Friday, the 13th at 8:30 a.m. And we had 3 items on the agenda. All 3 of them we covered in the information and action items tonight. First on the agenda was the Trobex tax abatement. Second on the agenda was the remaining bond funds, potential uses for those. And third was a possible land donation next to Westwood Elementary School.
Thank you. And last, we have future agenda items. June board meeting work session topics will include preliminary 2022-2023 budget presentation, student voice and the school board, schools update, year-end celebrations, and policy readings. At this time, does any board member want to suggest a future agenda item? Board Policy Development and Governance Committee will review the requests and report on their recommendations. Dr. Green?
I'm not absolutely sure that this is appropriate, but I have a concern about, I know we provide people with the ability to comment publicly, but to suggest that equity is actually a racist ideology and has no place in our school district, I'm concerned about that, and it might be useful to have an open discussion about that amongst board members at some point. What I'm concerned about is that there are people who may believe that, and it may cause them to do things that they may not otherwise do. I'm just concerned that we simply let that lay out there and fester. That's all. And I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I just throw it out because I just don't like that being able to make, I mean, people can make any statement they want to. I understand that, but that's not true in my opinion, but that's just my opinion, and it might be useful to have some kind of a discussion about it.
Maybe Tracy could do the legal aspects of it.
Well, I'm not suggesting we shut off anybody's right to say anything they want to.
Absolutely.
What I'm saying, though, is that when people say things that are really inappropriate in terms of if somebody believed them, there are people shooting people because they believe that stuff. They're shooting people because they believe that white people are under attack. And I find that to be not something I want to participate in or not respond to when, and I'm not suggesting that the person who said it is in any way doing that. I think the person, if people don't understand.
Correct.
Then they can say things because they just don't understand the ramifications of all of that. And that's all.
So we heard your idea, and Monica, are you saying challenge accepted? That you're going to bring that to
Thank you.
your committee and see if you want to further that discussion or what that would look like that's different than we're already doing. Okay. Okay, well, meeting is adjourned. So thank you very much for watching. The time is 8:32 p.m. and we'll be back June 1st, 2022.
Okay, good. Enough said then.